Yeah, Friday! Welcome to the Ranting Weight Watcher podcast, the future #1 weight loss podcast in the world. I am your host, Donato Russo. I hope you enjoy the show today. If this is your first time here and you enjoy the show, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. If the podcast app you're listening on allows you to rate the show, please leave a 4-star or 5-star rating. Any rating is greatly appreciated. Here we are, episode 83. I am so excited to bring you this episode. It's a few weeks in the making, and we're not going to hold anything back. Let's get into this. Journey updates. It was a good week this week, so we ended week 3 with a 1.4 pound loss. But I have too much to talk about today, and I don't want to spend any more time on this. So we're going to get right into it, our conversation with Alison Fortune. So I am very excited today to have a special guest joining me, cognitive behavioral therapist Alison Fortune. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on the show. Can you tell my listeners a little bit about yourself, how you became a cognitive behavioral therapist, and what is cognitive behavioral therapy?
Sure. I've been a therapist for 21 years, practicing cognitive behavioral therapy, which is basically looking at mindset specifically and how our thoughts affect our feelings and then our behavior and actions. So the belief is that if you change how you think about things, it then affects how you feel, and then it ultimately can change behavior and actions. I did my undergraduate work at Hofstra, and then initially I started graduate school down in Florida and then transferred to NYU to finish my clinical work.
So, Alison, you are also a listener to the show. Can you tell me how you found the show and what do you think of it or anything like that?
Absolutely. When I started Weight Watchers, I'm super into podcasts. I like to listen to them when I walk. I found your podcast probably like the first week that I joined in August. And I'm walking and I'm like, yes, I just love everything you were saying. And I felt like a lot of it spoke to not just about, okay, this is what we need to eat, this is what you need to do, which you find on a lot of podcasts. This was much more about how you're going to change how you're thinking, your actions, and really kind of not being so black or white, not these extremes. I noticed a lot of, I'm not changing something, and my 4-week rule, I remember walking and just saying, yes.
Good. I like it when people agree. So I'm always curious, how did you find the show? Did you find it on Weight Watchers because you're part of Weight Watchers, or did you find it outside of?
No, I Googled Weight Watchers podcasts.
Okay.
And I found a couple, and some of them didn't resonate with me. And then I found yours, and I'm like, yes, this is what I want to hear.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it.
So in speaking about mindset, some of the questions that I had for you, and I think a lot of your listeners would want to know, is you've been on Weight Watchers a couple of times, but this January 2019, something was very different. And that's what, as a cognitive behavioral therapist, I'm super interested in. But I think a lot of people would be really interested to know, okay, what is different this time? What was this mindset shift that made it doable, sustainable, maintainable, that this is the time, this is going to be my last time, this is different?
There's so many parallels between my life and my father's life. I mean, even to the point where, like, I mean, because of the gastric bypass, I have a scar that goes down my stomach.
Right.
The entirety, because they opened me up. my father had a scar, the same exact scar, but for different reasons. I'm not going to get all into that, but I drew parallels like this. I also thought my father died at 44. At this time I'm 40, so when I'm having these thoughts, I'm either 39 or 40. Could this mean, like, if we're drawing parallels like this, is this what history repeating itself looks like? It's slightly different, but it's a repetition in some way. So it put a fear of God in me, really, to really think, okay, I got to make a change in this life, and I have to do it for my daughter, because I don't want to do to my daughter what my father did. I mean, I was a lot older, but my daughter would be much younger if I left at 44. I was also facing the idea of getting a revision surgery, because people are now getting bypass surgery and then ruining their lives again and then going back for a tune-up. I didn't trust myself to make the correction and do the surgery again. So I knew I had to work more on my mind than anything else going into it. Basically, 11 months of the year for Weight Watchers' monthly fee is paid for by my job. I pay for 1 month out of the year.
Wow.
So that was like the last excuse, I feel. And I said, I have nothing left. I have nothing to hold on to. If I failed this time, what will I say to people? That became like the thought. It was like a step-by-step, I would say, tackle one thing at a time.
I thought it was interesting in your podcast, you did talk about the gastric bypass and how you were, air quotes, forced to go to therapy about it.
Yeah, I was definitely forced.
I remember a lot of issues when you were talking about that with that episode, because I said, wow, he got such a horrible experience, because really with cognitive behavioral therapy, it's really about your thoughts, again, how they affect your feelings and then your actions or your behavior. So we certainly don't play the blame game, because you have to take ownership and accountability for your behavior. And people usually, if addiction is the food, right, and you're getting gastric bypass, the issue becomes, if you can't eat, you just will find something else to use. Right? There's a lot of cross addiction, whether it be alcohol, gambling, sex addiction, porn. There's all kinds of things. So it's about looking at what is going to be different. How are you going to change your life? Because you're not going to be able to feed those feelings, so to speak.
Yeah.
But playing the blame game is a waste of time. And again, it's not always about blaming. It's kind of sometimes looking at, well, what you didn't get or what you needed or what, but it's not about blaming that person. It's just a matter of fact thing. That person might not have been available to give you what you needed at the time. And that's okay. But if you're still going to eat over it, poor me, I'm the victim, it's a waste of time.
I agree 100%. If you aren't willing to, at some point, own part of the problem, you're not going to get anywhere.
Nope. No, and it's the same thing. I mean, I'm sure there are many people that are fortunate to work and what you have no excuse in terms of being able to join Weight Watchers. They pay for 11 months. But the truth of the matter is, even to me, I think sometimes that can be an excuse for people. Well, it's expensive. I don't have the money. If you have the money for a Starbucks and a donut,
right? You
have the money. That's the same amount of money it will cost, right, to pay for Weight Watchers.
Especially if you're doing it daily. I get that benefit is $500 a year, and I only have to pay for 1 month. When you add your cup of coffee daily and you multiply that 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year, I'll bet you could find $500.
Right. Absolutely.
Especially if it's Starbucks as opposed to Dunkin' Donuts or something.
Right. And even Dunkin' Donuts, the fancy drink and a donut, you do it a couple of days a week. There's your Weight Watchers.
It is. It's sad. It's crazy that there's so many people that won't ever make that connection because they don't think on the broad spectrum. They think acutely. They think this is the moment. I don't have money here at this moment. And
right. Everybody makes choices and you have to choose. I'm not somebody who drinks Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, sometimes my kids I like it and I'll get it for them, but to me, it's a waste of money. I'd rather spend that money on something else. But everybody has, every choice you make has every decision and choice you make has consequences.
I agree.
So one of the other things that I thought was really interesting was, I was curious, what do you think you learned about yourself along the journey? And a lot of times you've talked about sacrifices. So I'm curious, what are the biggest sacrifices you've had to make?
I think my most valuable lesson that I learned this time is that it doesn't have to be a drastic change. It has to be a slight adjustment done over time. And you have to give everything time to show you the results you're looking for. Nothing happened. You didn't put it all on yesterday, and you're not taking it all off tomorrow. So now I just eliminated, all you have is time, right? I just eliminated everything. Now just work.
I like the concept of time, because money, you can always make more, right? But time is this thing that is precious. We can't get it back. And also kind of that black or white thinking, I need to fit into this dress now, or I need to be this weight by this time. All of those things set people up for such failure, because when you're looking about it or thinking about it, time is all that you have. You have the time. Why are you to get somewhere only to never be able to keep it? I think that slow, steady pace of taking the time to learn and change behaviors, habits.
After succeeding the first time, I felt like it did something for me with discipline. When I said to myself, because really this all started with the introduction of exercise. When I decided it's time to introduce exercise, I stuck so strictly to the time limits I gave to everything. As no matter what I felt in the emotion of that moment, oh, it's not working. It's not working. I didn't lose enough this week, or I didn't lose anything this week. I kept saying to myself, you said you're not making any changes for this many weeks. That's it. It doesn't matter. You said it. And every time I had to tell myself that, I feel like the scale had less power. And also the discipline that I was building, I just had no idea how valuable that would become.
Right. The discipline became the habit. The habit is I exercise X number of days a week. It doesn't matter if I'm tired, if it's raining, if I have a headache, if I say I think I've heard you say on the podcast, I like to do 5, my bare minimum is 4.
Right. You give yourself a leeway, and it's not like, even if it's 3, even if it became 3 1 week, it's 1 week. It doesn't make you an entire failure of your entire journey.
It's kind of like throwing darts at a board, right? If you hit 80% mark, you'd feel really good. If you hit 80% of your exercise, all of a sudden you're a failure.
It's
right.
It's exactly that. It's exactly that.
Yeah. So it's that mindset shift. It's so interesting because your discipline became your habit. It just became your new habit that has been a huge part, I think, of your success.
The discipline I created just by saying, no, we're not going to change anything. No. We said it. We're living up to what we said we were going to do. And that became the backbone of everything.
Which you then said the scale had less power over me.
Right. Because it was all about the work, right. Everything became about, we said we would do this. We're going to do it. And
okay. So if it's about the work, here's what I'm curious about. If it's about the work, and I have to preface this with saying, I am amazed at how you sometimes handled the swings on the scale. And I don't know that I've ever heard anyone be as honest and brutally honest about, I'm up 6 pounds. And I know you also have struggled with, I think it's lymphedema in your leg.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm always floored. Like when I wait for the journey updates, and then if you're like, I gained, I'm like, oh, is it the lymphedema?
You know what I hate saying that the most, right? I know when the scale is going to have a bad result because of my leg, but I hate saying it. Because it feels like a crutch almost. It has, and sometimes I won't even say, I'll own the weight gain like I pigged out, because I'd rather say that than say my leg is fluctuating.
Well, is that because you feel like it sounds like an excuse?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that's something you just have to get over.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I feel like I've always said it before. There's a thin line between reasons and excuses. And
okay.
At any given moment, anything I say could be used as an excuse or a reason.
Are you worried about that? Because in the past, you'd find too many excuses. I'm not gaining that much weight. I'm not this. That you're fearful of just being truthful, like in terms of, okay, this is what it is. This is my leg is going to do this from time to time.
Right.
And it is what it is versus, oh, I'm using this as an excuse.
Yes. This podcast, the inception of it, is because I needed a new way to make myself accountable. Because I was sitting in these Weight Watcher workshops feeling, okay, that applies to them. I have more success than them, so it doesn't apply to me. And it was so many workshops that I was thinking like this, that I said, wait a minute, this is not going to lead me anywhere good. So if you're in this workshop and you don't feel accountable in the workshop, and that's what's supposed to give you accountability, now you need something else to give you accountability. What is it? And so the Ranting Weight Watcher was born.
I love it. Listen, anything that keeps you accountable is, it's probably one of my favorite words.
It is. It's definitely, and then finding ways to keep yourself accountable, because even like when you choose accountability buddies, there's going to be moments between you and the accountability buddy where one of you is weak. You're only as strong as your weakest link at any given moment. When you depend on other people for help and everything else, you're only as strong as their weakest moment. When these people say, I need an accountability buddy, I feel like that's, yeah, okay, but fine. When they are strong, they're going to help you. But what happens when they're weak?
Right.
What happens when they're not available? There's going to be a moment for both. There's going to be a moment when they're weak. Are you going to fall when they're weak? Or when they're not there, are you going to fall? And it's going to be like, oh, it's because they weren't there.
Right. It's kind of, I look at an accountability buddy as like this, when people have anxiety, that instead of falling all the way into it, they have what's called safety behaviors. Like it's almost like a security blanket. And ultimately you want to work towards not needing that security blanket. And when I think about accountable, listen, people can lie to their app. They cannot track something that they're eating, but the only person you're lying to is yourself. And I think, right. I guess accountability comes with honesty. And if you can't be honest with yourself, and it's okay, nobody is perfect. Mm-hmm. There's no such thing as perfection. I mean, striving for perfection is a waste of time and it will only make you unhappy. It basically tells you that you can't do it on your own. And I think that's the problem. It's this psychological thing of, oh, I need somebody else to do it, when you can do it yourself. There's so much support. I mean, I don't go to meetings. I'm just digital only. I do like connect, find stuff I like. The rest, I just keep scrolling by. That's just what it is. But yeah, I mean, I think there needs to be some sense of, I love your Ranter's Creed. We'll jump into that for a second. And I was the only probably sad person when you changed it to the you, because I love thinking about it in the I, like, yes, there's nothing that can stop me. I love that. I think that's so motivational and inspirational. I remember hearing it one time when I was just having a down day and being so inspired. I'm like, I am all these things. Nothing can stand in my way.
There's so many people that, but I feel like it's by changing it to you, it's an invitation for you to make the choice consciously to say I mean, that's just by me telling you, if you yourself now, if you were saying it along, if the Ranter's Creed was playing right now and you were repeating it along with the Ranter's Creed, but you changed the word from you to I, isn't there something to be had there? Any change of mindset in that moment? Yes.
I mean, there could be. The person has to be able to believe it and feel it. And I think there's this concept of fake it till you make it. So a lot of times I'll ask people to do affirmations always in the eye, speaking in the eye, whether you believe it or not. I am worthy. I am smart. I am strong. I am compassionate. I am fearless. Whatever the thing is that they're struggling with, you kind of like turn it around. Right. So I think hearing it in the eye, and a lot of times if you feel horrible about yourself and someone says, oh, you're a good father, you're an excellent worker, you're a great friend, it's they're telling you. In your head, if you don't believe it, you're kind of like, this person's a liar. Where when you say, I am a good father, I have imperfections, but I do the best I can do. I am a good husband. I am a good, worker. I'm a good friend. I'm a great son. I'm a great son-in-law. Whatever the thing is, when you own it. So I guess that's where I get caught up in the I, and I try to work with people all the time. Use the I statements. Don't blame you. When Weight Watchers changed to the personal points, it was just a frenzy. The Weight Watchers was sneak peeking with, this is going to be 0, that's going to be 0. People were in an uproar. I mean, the system crashed. But I was really curious how you feel you handled just this. All of a sudden, I'm doing great. I'm on a roll. This is the first time it's really working for me. I've made mindset changes. I've made shifts in my behavior. I have new habits now. Boom. So I was curious how you kind of stepped into the personal points, and really what was your thought process around it?
It was actually my second change, because when I joined, there was not green, blue, and purple yet. That was the first change. But I feel like, or when the plan changed from, I always forget the name of the previous one.
Freestyle?
Freestyle, yes. When it was freestyle and it became green, blue, and red, or purple, whatever it is, whatever the color is. But when it became these colors, there was the assurance that one of the plans was similar to what you're doing, right? So, and that was set ahead of time, where they completely kept everybody in the dark right up until launch day. How are people going to track things and do things confidently if they know nothing about what they're doing? I mean, the day one of when I joined Weight Watchers, I knew nothing about what I was doing. I had to be taught things, right? So I was one person in a group of 60 or 70 people that joined that Saturday that didn't know how to do something. And you just instantly flipped a switch and said, okay, we have however many millions of members, and now all of you don't know what you're doing at the exact same time. Here we go.
But talk about anxiety.
Yeah. It was just my aggravation was all toward that.
Was there a big difference from you switching to, I think you were on blue, right?
I was on blue. There was not a big difference, and I think it was because of my approach. When they were asking these survey questions, my mentality was based on not what I love to eat, what I like to eat since I've been on the journey. The survey question.
So it wasn't really a huge change then?
No, it was almost no change whatsoever for me.
Right. My plan didn't change that much. I was on green. I used to have 30, and I think I now have 26. And with the vegetables and water, there's my extra 4 points, and I'm pretty much eating the same.
Right. And that's exactly, I lost the 1 point, and by 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning, I drank enough water that got the 1 point back.
Right. That's what I was laughing at. I'm like, water, you get it back.
Right.
So it wasn't much of a change, but I think I'm always confused when people say, well, I'm now gaining weight on the new plan. And I'm thinking, if you're gaining weight on the new plan, what are you doing different? Like if you like to eat and it was working for you, because they keep saying the old plan was working, how drastic could your plan be so different now?
Now I'm reminding myself, I did kind of go through some mental barriers with the new plan afterwards. So it didn't present itself right away. Tuesday night, particularly, I went from having 9 points at the end of the night. And all of a sudden, on Tuesday, it was the same exact food.
Okay.
19 points remaining.
Oh, wow.
And so I was just like, whoa, this is different. And it affected me. It brought back an old monster where it was like, oh, what do I do with 19 points? You know? And that's what, when I had day one, I had 54 points. And even when it changed to blue, we're talking, I was in the 50s. So I would end the nights with that many points, 19 points at the end of eating, and then say, oh, I could eat a bunch of stuff. And so I'd be choosing these Weight Watcher candy bars and all these things, the 2 points and 3 points and whatever else, and blow 19 points on these snacks.
Right. The problem becomes it sets you up for unhealthy eating patterns.
It does. Because everything I was choosing was so low in points, it showed up on the scale really quickly in the beginning. Even as big as I was, when I started using these 19 points or 20 points at the end of the day on Weight Watcher related snacks, I was like, okay, not going down as quickly anymore. And so I realized, okay, you got to do something to use these points during the day, because you can't have them there at the end of the night. And now all of a sudden, personal points plan comes in, and now I'm being faced with almost 20 points available at 7 o'clock in the evening, 8 o'clock in the evening, and that old thought process coming back saying, well, what do I do with this? And almost like the excitement of having that many points available to me. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, hold on, back up. Because last Tuesday, when you had 9 points remaining, you ate everything you ate today. You can't be hungry.
Right. That's the thing. It's actually asking yourself, are you hungry? Because if you're eating out of emotion, if you're eating out of boredom, if you're eating, because my biggest thing is eating when I'm tired. I'm just like, I'm tired. I need to go to bed.
Right. The thing became it wasn't that I was hungry at all. It was about, what can I eat with these points?
Right.
I never had this before. What can I eat with them? It's just, it was like almost like a challenge.
So what did you add more points in during the day so that you wouldn't be stuck with or left with?
I knew, for whatever reason, I don't know what to name it, so I call it 3-dimensional thinking. And it could be completely stupid to call it that. I have no idea. But all I know is that when I try to describe the way I think about something to someone, it's my only way of trying to make them understand. When it came time to make this choice, I automatically, for some reason, knew that switching my points around and eating them so I would have 9 points again in this Tuesday would be different. If I ate the 10 points, I knew it would be different. And I knew that my thinking had to be different for this moment, only because last Tuesday I was satisfied.
Right. Absolutely. What you call this 3-dimensional way of thinking is when we're explaining to people their thought patterns and why or how they're making decisions based on judgment, impulse control, decision-making skills. You have the emotional brain, or the emotional mind, we call it. And that's all of, I feel this, I'm fearful, I want this. It's all to deal with you're making decisions based on emotion. And then you have this like rational mind that is logic. It's based all on thinking. Well, what's it going to be like 10 years down the road, or 10 days from now, or 10 weeks from now? So you have this like very logical brain, and then you have the emotional brain, and they're circles. And when they overlap, that little bit of the circle that overlaps between the two is what's called wise mind. And when we make wise mind decisions, you're having some of the emotion, some of the logic, and it's based much more on rational patterns of decision-making skills that are healthy for us. So it's funny that you call it the 3-dimensional, because that's kind of what we talk about, how we make decisions.
I found in the, playing with the app and everything, I found the quick add feature. And I said to myself, how can I use this quick add feature to benefit me in this moment. And so I didn't, because I value my tracking, because when I have a gain or whatever the case may be, I can look at my tracker, depend on the moment, depend on, okay, here's the last 7 days. At what moment could cause this gain? And my tracking ability, or my tracking, is what I have referred in the past as condom accuracy. If we trust condoms and condoms are 97% accurate, if my tracking is 97% accurate, I can trust my tracking. And that's how I've applied all of my thinking and all of my logic, is I don't want to add a bunch of fake food and then not be able to trust my tracking. Oh, I didn't really eat that. I just added that to use up the points. So I used Quick Add, and I called it Breaking Psychological Barriers. And I gave it however many points I needed to get to under 10.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
And so on Tuesday night in particular, it was a 19-point remaining. I gave it Breaking Psychological Barriers, 10 points. I was at 9 all over again.
As long as you're consistent, you can then go back and see whether that's the biggest piece. Being consistent, it's not always accurate, but consistent with, these are the breaking the psychological barriers. It's that 10 points that I don't want to deal with.
And that was easily eliminated if I had to show somebody my tracker, if I had to show a coach my tracker, I could say breaking psychological barriers is not food. Now, here we are. So what the change happened in November. I noticed 2 weeks in. Here we are in March. I can't remember the last time I put breaking psychological barriers, regardless of how many points were left. Because it became a point of, I don't need it anymore.
Right. It's amazing how we have this attachment to things, or we give something so much power over us. And then once we get rid of it, I don't know which, I think it was a Built Bar or something. I was listening and I kind of
protein bar.
Yeah. I kind of inside chuckle, because I'm like, he's so attached to it. And then I'm like, oh, see, it's gone. I didn't miss it. It's just some of these things that we feel like we have to have something. Mm-hmm. And then when we're able to see, oh, I don't really need it. I mean, something silly is I just drink my coffee black. I used to put stevia in it. And then one day I just said, I don't need it. And I wouldn't even drink it without it. Mm-hmm. So you go from, oh, I just didn't need that, and it's for me, it's a sense of freedom where nothing is that powerful that it can control me.
Right. Yeah.
No one snack, that kind of thing.
Yeah. That protein bar, I remember I think I attempted to remove it probably 3 times and failed. Then when I decided to create this whole diabetic experiment, I'm no longer within my points. I need to make drastic changes. This is the experiment. You said you were doing this for 6 weeks. It's time to make a change. So all of a sudden it became necessary to remove the protein bar. It didn't become, I wasn't doing it because just for the hell of it. I was doing it because it was necessary.
Was the protein bar the same amount of, because I would think with the diabetic that the high protein is good. Did it have a lot of sugar, or was it a lot of points? What was the reason you were saying I need to get rid of it over something else that had points?
To be honest with you, I don't know that it changed at all. It remained 4 points. It was all about getting underneath or within the daily point allotment for the day.
Okay. So do you feel that now that you're, doing this diabetic experiment, do you feel that you're eating less sugar? Do you feel better?
I don't feel like I'm eating less sugar. I feel like I'm eating less stuff that becomes sugar once the digestion process begins. Because eating sugar itself, it's not there. But a lot of stuff that becomes sugar once the body starts to digest it, that's what I've eliminated. The rice, the protein bar, and any basically other carb related side at dinner is what I went after.
Right. That's what I heard you say in your last podcast.
Yeah.
And so, speaking of the bar you got rid of, I was curious for you to kind of talk a little bit more about this hunger anxiety.
It was just, really it boils down to fear. I've said it before, because I based my entire journey to never be hungry. Because if I was never, I decided in my mind that if I was never hungry, I would never go after something I shouldn't be eating.
Okay.
So that's when the whole schedule of when I eat things started to become built at that moment, when I said to myself, okay, this is a time where I feel hungry. So if I eat 30 minutes before this, I don't feel hungry at this time. So then it became, what can I eat at that time to make sure I stay satisfied?
Mm-hmm. So you have what, 6 kind of meals, or how do you break down breakfast?
I have my first meal of the day would be 6:30 in the morning. My next meal it used to be like 9:30 on the dot. Now it's kind of pushed its way into 10:30, 11 o'clock. And it's also given less power to that protein bar because of how much later the time period that I'm having that second breakfast happens. The bell pepper and the carrots used to happen around 12:30, and now it's happening more like 1:30. The main theme is I still have not found myself to have any hunger at any given moment. So when you start minusing things, not replacing things, what it did to me, like, oh, well, you're going to feel hungry. If you don't replace it, you're going to feel hungry. And then the fear of feeling hungry came, and that's why I called it hunger anxiety, because I didn't feel hungry. I didn't know I was going to feel hungry. It was the fear of the possibility of feeling hungry.
Right. Well, anxiety is fear of the unknown, and we call that anticipatory anxiety, right? Anticipating I'm going to be hungry, and if I'm hungry, somehow I could be out of control.
Right.
Right.
And the fear came based on how I built the beginning of the journey.
Mm-hmm. But you're not there now. You're completely.
You're right.
Again, you also mentioned that eventually, I think your employer is wanting people to come back into the office.
Right. Right.
Which is going to be a whole nother set of shifting if you are on a specific schedule around, I eat at this time, I eat at this time. So.
Right. Well, I was doing that in the office too.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
okay.
I did do that in the office because they allowed us, certain things. If you didn't need a utensil to eat it, it was okay to eat it at your desk. So, if you needed a spoon to eat yogurt, then they didn't really want that. But if it was just handheld and you were eating an apple, that was a different story. So it was really about, so if anything, it would change by going back to the office is going to be about what do I eat when instead? Or do I shift at 6:30 in the morning? Do I do the yogurt then because it requires a utensil? And do I just bring the little English muffin with me to work like a sandwich wrapped in some foil, heat it up, and then that becomes the second breakfast, and they just switch.
Right. Okay.
That's just, that's premeditative thinking, I guess you can say.
Absolutely. Being proactive to make sure that this still works for me.
And now all the anxiety I have left to returning to the office has to do with how will it affect my exercise.
Right.
And I'm sure I won't be able to, like Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan till they get punched in the face. And so and that's basically how I'm waiting for the punch now. Right. So if they say we're going back to the office, I can go through my emotions. And now the first encounter with exercise after a full day of work and driving in traffic again to come home, what will happen? Well,
you certainly will figure it out. I don't know what time you have to be in the office or what your commute is, but there's also, do you say, let me try getting up 2 days a week, an hour early, and, instead of doing maybe a 90-minute walk, you're doing a 45-minute walk, but you're putting on a weighted vest and burning almost twice as many calories, or building it up to it. When it's something you want, you make it a priority, right?
Absolutely.
And you figure out how to do it. That's where you can say, well, people say, well, there's never time to exercise. Well, it's too dark at night and I don't want to get up in the morning. Well, then you don't really want to exercise.
I agree. If I have to wake up at 4:00 in the morning every day so that the exercise happens before work, I will do that.
Right. And again, it doesn't have to, it's not black or white. It doesn't have to be every day. But if you pick 3 days, they said these 3 days. So this way I have more time when I come home with my family and dinner is earlier. But then on these 2 days, maybe I forego it. And I am, a weekend warrior that makes up whatever I want to make up on Saturday and Sunday. It's figuring out what works for you. But those people that hold on to it can't change. The only guarantee in life is things keep changing.
I agree. That's great. I love it. The thing is if my goal is 5 days a week and I'm okay with 4, that means 3 of the days happen Monday through Friday. So The other 2 is Saturday, Sunday. That's a given. I'm doing it Saturday, Sunday. But so I only have to plan for 2 or 3 days during the week where I'm either waking up early or I'm dealing with the evening.
Right. And if it's a morning and you didn't get great sleep, then you just say, okay, I want to sleep an extra hour. Well, then that means I'm going to have a later evening.
Right.
It's just it doesn't have to be one or the other. You figure it out and you make it work for you.
I believe anybody else can do the exact same thing. And it's just it's about figuring out what's really important.
Right. Also, the amount of time we spend worrying about things that, oh my, we are the only mammals that create our own anxiety. We're sitting on a comfortable couch, looking at a TV, on a phone, and yet we are worried we create our own anxiety. It's all this internal stuff. Mm-hmm. There's no real danger,
No, you're right.
No external, it's mostly internal anxiety. But, and so I had one quick question for you before. I know probably we're kind of going over, but
yes.
Yeah. So my only question I just wanted to ask is, so where do you see yourself, a couple of years from now with this podcast?
With this podcast? I mean, I'm not trying to give myself time limits here, but I would love, I have a little piece of paper. It's taped to the wall right now. I don't want to take it off, but I wrote, I will not stop until the Ranting Weight Watchers, the #1 weight loss related podcast in the world. That's the goal. And the amount of support I receive from emails, from posts, and all of these things that people send and say, "Oh, it's because of you. I'm doing this. It's because you inspire me," and all this stuff. It's those things that keep it going. It's like they keep the flames burning, and I never realized how much work this. Just the same as I never realized how much work losing weight would be, I never realized how much work this podcast would be. And when I think about how it affects, Daddy's always in that room. He's always in the room with the door shut. And that's basically, I spend so much time in this room doing things for this podcast or for work. I think last week I spent minimum 10, possibly 12 hours a day in this chair for 2 or 3 days of the week.
Wow.
But it has been an awesome experience with you. I would love to do this again in the future. And if you could say yes or no or whatever, but I'd leave it up to you.
I'm laughing. I'm like, after you do all the editing, you might not want to say that.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. This has been an awesome experience with you.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Have a great week.
You too. Bye-bye. Alison, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. To give your time for this episode today, it means so much to me. And this episode, in my mind, will be one of the most special episodes I've ever done. Just like in my journey, this podcast is on a journey. And I feel that today, this episode, was one of those transformative moments that is going to take this podcast to the next level. Because as I said before, it's not just a tagline. I will not stop until the Ranting Weight Watcher podcast is the #1 weight loss related podcast in the world. Last week, what did I talk about with you guys? I talked about moments in my journey that when I succeeded, or right before I succeeded, there was this moment of clarity, this, I could do this. And today, I went over many moments in my journey, and some of which I developed behaviors that became the backbone to my success. But what was the one thing I could not do in order to achieve this success? What's the one thing? I could not quit. See, so many of us would have had these moments of frustration, these moments where nothing is going your way, and you would quit because of it. You would go crazy because you feel like you're doing everything right. Now, go back to what I've said the last 2 weeks. Every time I've ever decided to do something, I went in with a plan. And it wasn't just a plan like, this is what I'm going to do. It was a plan with a who, a what, a where, a when, a why, a how. It was extremely detailed from beginning to end. The commitment was made when the plan was made. And then it was just about implementation of the plan. And then, no matter what the plan caused, whether the scale went up, whether the scale went down, I had to stay the course because I set the course from the beginning of the plan. And if you want this level of success, if you want to achieve, I suggest that you do these things in this way. Be detailed and chase that thing in that amount of detail for however long you said. You keep doing it for however long you said you were going to do it. You make no changes. You set forth a plan. You put that plan to work. And at the end of that course, you can make adjustments. And you may just find what I found. The discipline to stick to what you said you were going to do might be the most valuable thing you could ever create in the success you want to achieve. But what did it start with? It started with a detailed plan that, whatever the cost, you did not back away from. It is probably the most difficult thing I ever had to do, was do what I said I was going to do. And it is the most valuable thing I ever did. I love each and every one of you. God bless you all.